Hey, Kilted Warrior here. Hope you're having a great day. Remember to subscribe if you enjoy this video, and if you'd like to see more videos covering Elder Scrolls, Fallout and Mass Effect, feel free to check out the channel. Otherwise, let us begin. Morrowind, Dwemer of Resdayn, a land of fire and ash. Here, fleeing persecution, Veloth and his people made a home in the shadow of doom and destiny. They were to be tested, and though they would stumble and face ruin from within and from without, the spirited people, worshipping gods old and new, would endure and create a legacy of triumph, hubris, regret, and be at the heart of events that would define a people, the world, and the divine. And its saints and heroes would never be forgotten, so long as the ancestors watch over the heirs of the moon and star.
Now go, mortal. Embrace your destiny. Defend these lands with my blessing.
This is the usual disclaimer. This video will spoil Morrowind's plot regarding the Dwemer, as well as have some brief references to ESO Markarth's questline, and in particular its epilogue. These mentions will be in the Dwemer of the West and the Disappearance of the Dwemer sections of the video. That said, this video will almost exclusively be about Morrowind's and Skyrim's Dwemer lore. Also remember, this week's question is, which is your favourite Elven race and why? It can include any Elven race, playable or not, and can be for any reason, gameplay or lore-wise. I look forward to hearing your thoughts, and I will give my own at the end of the video for those who are interested. Introduction: The Elves of the Deep. The Dwemer, the Deep Elves, the Lost Race. They are one of the most influential races in Tamriel's and even Mundus's history, for they were the race not content to leave questions unanswered. For this enigmatic and intelligent people sought to push the boundaries of what mortals could achieve in an existence that attempted to put limitations upon them. They created great works, unparalleled works of engineering, architecture, and an unequalled academia, whether it was building new automata to solve daily problems, or testing the theories of the very fabric of existence. The Dwemer had no true equals, and yet they were gone, with nothing left but an echo of who they were, found throughout their vast, once great cities in the deep. Join me as we delve into an underground empire and try to understand their people, their achievements, and what happened to the Dwemer.
Their history and culture is all around us in Markarth. A race of stonecutters, artisans, and engineers. They invented machines and built elaborate underground cities where they researched powers to rival the gods themselves. And then, at a time we are still not sure when, they disappeared. The whole people, all at once, leaving behind only their works.
The Dwemer of Resdayn. The Chimer were not the only people who settled in Resdayn, far away from the influence of the old merry world that they had fled from, as the Dwemer also in their search for answers regarding the Earthbones, an endeavour that their once compatriots did not approve of, just as they had disapproved of the Chimer's Daedra worship. It just so happens that the race of scientists and engineers found themselves in the perfect place, with not only a wealth of minerals offered by the volcanic landscapes of Resdayn, but also deep within Red Mountain on Vardenfell, they would find the key piece of the puzzle, of the nature of existence. For an example of the Earthbones in that of the Heart of Lorkhan would finally allow the Dwemer to test their theories. Yet that would take time, and the Dwemer of Resdayn would find their high point under the rule of Dumak Dwarf King in the 5th century of the First Era, as together with the Chimer they pushed the mighty Nords that had threatened them with their Thu'um back across the Velothi Mountains. A great victory that would cement the First Council, an alliance with the Chimer between Indril Nerevar and Dumak Dwarf King. Friends, comrades, but that was the zenith that would be marred by a disagreement and the exodus of several clans of the Dwemer who disagreed with the arrangement, with Clan Rorkin leading the way and Clan Kragan following suit. Yet the Dwemer of Resdayn were still a power within Tamriel, and their great plans, their desire to find the answers to the questions they had asked themselves for generations, the answers were at hand, as Dwemer miners found a stone within Red Mountain, and the great tonal architect and enchanter Kagrenac determined it was the answer to his questions. The heart of Lorkhan was within it. It was a pivotal moment for Kagrenac and his theories, for Dumak, who might be able to bounce back from the exodus that had caused a schism in his people, for the god-fearing Chimer, led by the devout Lord Nerevar, and for the world. It was not clear when the Dwemer found the heart, but by the mid-7th century of the First Era, the Chimer would become aware of the peril of such a discovery, and what tampering with it might do, with Vorin Dagoth supposedly confirming that Kagrenac's intentions were to use the heart, and then Nerevar would attempt to persuade his old friend Dumak, though he would fail. The War of the First Council started, and it would end with the events inside Red Mountain. Whatever really happened, whether Kagrenac had made a mistake in his calculations, or Nerevar with the help of Azura had unmade them, whatever happened to the Dwemer, they were gone, and not just in Resdayn, but across Nirn and Mundus, gone in an instant. For the Dwemer's end was a shock to the world, but so it was, and all that was left was their creations, and a snapshot of life in Dwemer society waiting for adventurers and mages to find. The Dwemer of the West. While the Dwemer tended to be united under their dwarf kings in Resdayn for generations, it was under the last dwarf king Dumak that fractures in the clans that made the great nation began to show. As the great dwarf king was declaring his victory over the expelled Nords, those of the First Empire of the Nords, with an alliance forged with the Chimer under Indril Nerevar. The decision then after the war to formalize a permanent alliance that would become known as the First Council had its dissenting clan voices. Chief among them was the Rorkin clan, whose chief, having declared their intention to leave Resdayn and forge their own path, took the mighty Dwemer hammer, Volendrung, and threw it into the sky, declaring they would settle where it landed. It flew west, and so the great clan followed. Through snowy Skyrim and then into fertile Cyrodiil, they journeyed until they reached the sands of the Alakir, Hammerfell, as it would be called, for the Dwemer hammer fell upon it as the Dwemer approached, and there they would build Volenfell, their great city, and expand out from there notably to Stros M'Kai, while various offshoot clans would reach parts of Cyrodiil and Skyrim in the case of Erkenfand, with some believing that they may have went as far as Blackmarsh as well. The Rorkin forged their own path, and if not for the events of Red Mountain, who knows what else they might have done. As for the legacy of this great Dwemer clan, was their reputation as the enchanters of the most powerful artifacts that even gods sought after. They created the mighty hammer itself, Volendrung, which naturally had great significance to them. Interesting then that it ended up in the possession of Malakath, an avowed enemy of the Dwemer. Yet they also created the legendary Spellbreaker, which was said to have been created when the clan's chief was at war with the also legendary Nord mage Shalador, and thus they created one of the most powerful anti-mage artifacts in history, which was lost in the climatic battle of that conflict, and like Volendrung became the possession of another Daedric prince, Periite. Yet despite their skill in crafting powerful artifacts, it is said that even before the events of Red Mountain, that they were pushed from Hammerfell. It is not clear why or by who, some claiming goblins, which seems unlikely. Yet it seemed the Dwemer were indeed doomed, no matter where they went, doomed with misfortune, perhaps of divine origin. Yet the Rorken were not the only Dwemer clan to leave Resdayn, for Clan Kragan, seeing the Rorken's exodus, decided to also travel west into the lands of Skyrim, setting up the great Dwemer city-state of Arkenfams, where they would eventually find a most mysterious material known as Ethereum. If the Rorken were known as the enchanters of great artifacts, then the Kragan would become known for harnessing the blue crystals found underground in Skyrim, the Ethereum. Such was its importance to the Dwemer in the region that they founded 3 more great city-states, in that of Mzulft, Bafarzel, and Raud-Befar. And a great alliance was then forged to collect the Ethereum and craft it, enchant it into some of the finest Dwemer creations. It was not the only thing the Dwemer discovered, however, for like the Dwemer of the East, they had found something else, something of divine power, dark echo of tonal energy, that would fascinate the Dwemer enchanters, just as the Heart of Lorkhan had done in the East. Yet whatever the sages of the Great Library and Orrery of Arkfazand had planned with such an artifact would not get the chance to be explored, for the alliance of the city-states collapsed and the Ethereum Wars began, as all sought control of the Ethereum Forge itself, weakening the Dwemer and allowing the Nord King to conquer some of the Dwemer states, thus leading to a scattering of the shards required to unlock the Great Forge. Yet it was not the end of their troubles, for they would take in the Falmer, the Snow Elves, who had been driven out by the Nords on the surface. Yet the Dwemer asked a terrible price. They blinded the Falmer and eventually enslaved them before a rebellion would then threaten the Dwemer states once more, the so-called War of the Crag. It is not clear how the war went, as of the 700th year of the First Era had arrived, and the events of Red Mountain would occur, and end the Dwemer of the once proud clan Kragan, along with all of the Dwemer. And so even before the end, the Dwemer had already began a steady decline in their fortunes for many reasons. Was Azura correct to proclaim them the doomed Dwemer? Even had they not tampered with the Heart of Lorkhan, none can say. Yet what of the Heart and Kagrenac?
Now, if I could just figure a scheme of classifying manifolds for tri-ply connected surfaces, or even more complex surfaces.
Kagrenac and the Earthbones. So the Dwemer faced several crises that threatened their great cities beneath the earth, yet they disappeared in an instant to the surprise of all. Why did it happen? What of the heart? One name is at the center of it all: Kagrenac, the chief tonal architect of the Dwemer. During his time, Kagrenac was considered the greatest among his Dwemer peers, a master enchanter, smith, and the greatest pioneer of tonal manipulation. He was famous among all Dwemer states. Even with the Exodus fragmenting the Dwemer people, they all still spoke of Kagrenac and his great theories and works. At the core of Dwemer identity was the desire to research the nature of the earth bones, the very essence of the Nirn we know and how the gods are related to it. Hence why the work, The Hanging Gardens of Wasteland Corridale, was so important to them. It was this endeavour that led the Dwemer to Resdayn. It was there they found the means to find the answers. Kagrenac wanted to put the tonal manipulation his people had pioneered to the test, and he studied the heart of Lorkhan, seemingly finding that this divine heart was et Ada in origin, and naturally a part of Lorkhan, and thus was of the earth bones, connected to Nirn, and therefore by manipulating it, they could manipulate existence before them. So Kagrenac set to work on how they might make use of this great boon upon his people, and he created his legendary tools, Sunder, Keening, and Wraithguard, which allowed him to use the tones, the divine sound emanating from it, to achieve unimaginable things. Yet he did not simply want to make himself or his dwarf king gods. No, that was thinking too small. That would be thinking like the fools who still worshipped unworthy gods, like the Chimer. No, the cynical great Dwemer devised a plan to not only elevate all Dwemer, but also to insult all gods by doing what the Dwemer did best: create a machine that would be their greatest, the Numidium. As described in the work Divine Metaphysics, Kagrenac sought to use the heart to power a great construct, the Numidium, a mechanical god that would usher in the age of the Dwemer's ascension, as he would connect his people to the heart to be immortal, and the heart would remain in their own mechanical god, and possibly challenge even the gods themselves. At least, that is what is believed by some. For the true intentions, as well as the exact theories of Kagrenac, are not fully known. As the Dunmer mage of House Tilvani, Baladas Demnevani, noted, few can even read some Dwemeris, let alone do a full translation of the works, and thus the exact meaning must be deduced from what is known. So Kagrenac certainly wanted to create the Numidium, yet despite his fame and the agreement of most of his contemporaries, there were dissenting voices, as noted in The Egg of Time, which, like Kagrenac's work, is not completely clear as to its content, except in that it was clearly an opposing view of some Dwemer that believed the risks involved with the heart and its manipulation was too great and risked calamity, an idea that the last living Dwemer, Yagrum Bagarn, seemed to agree with when Enerverine gave him Kagrenac's work, or rather the descriptions of it. For time it seemed proved the dissenters right, and the Egg of Time wrong, as Kagrenac's hubris may have destroyed his own people, leaving his work to be used by others, with the tribunal making themselves gods, which would be an insult to his work, and then Dagoth-Ur, who sought to imitate much of his work. The question then becomes, what did happen to the Dwemer? The Disappearance and the Last Question. So the Dwemer disappeared, as was apparent to all that were left to ponder where the venerable people went. There are a few theories that I will touch on here. First, with the tribunal teachings, they argue that after Nerevar reached the depths of Red Mountain and found the heart, that he was able to use the tools of Kagrenac with Azura's guidance to unmake the Dwemer, pulling a Thanos on them as it were. I will also note that the wording does imply that Dagoth also gained this knowledge, or at least he was there when Azura appeared in this account, assuming it is true. But Nerevar seems to be the one that uses the tools, presumably, and is able to undo the supposed immortality the Dwemer had gained for themselves prior by using the heart. Of course, Vivek, being Vivek, was always going to take his own view when he was writing his sermons, in which he indicates that the new medium was activated and that they went full Avengers on it. That is, the tribunal were able to destroy it, and thus the Dwemer with it. So for me, that does sound like classic Vivek, probably a lie, as he does like to pull the old "we gained divinity through enlightenment" nonsense, which is not true, as indicated by Morrowind's plot. Though it is an interesting take, as is the case with some of his sermons, he is actually contradicting temple doctrine, so be aware of that. Then of course, on the more serious side, you have the Ashlander perspective, also noted by the dissident priests. The priests don't seem to confirm or deny the Ashlander perspective, but they seem to share its view. That is, that the Dwemer destroyed themselves. Presumably Kagrenac may have attempted to use the tools to give the aforementioned immortality, but it failed and did the opposite. Unfortunately for poor Yagrum Bagarn, he was of course off plane, so he doesn't know what happened, but he does have some theories. But that said, if you do give him some of the books that you can also give to Baladas in his quest, he will note that regarding the Egg of Time, that perhaps the Dwemer acted prematurely due to the War of the First Council and caused their own doom. He's also clear at his disdain for Kagrenac and his work. So we have they destroyed themselves through hubris, or someone did it for them. But there are other options. One is that the Khajiit's Tender of the Main, who was speaking of the dragon break caused in Daggerfall, that being referenced in the book Where Were You When the Dragon Broke. It indicated that the Main, who they served, believed that the Dwemer caused a dragon break and disrupted time, which is a curious thing, as it could mean that more than one outcome was possible, as was proven at the time of Daggerfall and its dragon break, that is, the warp in the west. There are other theories noted in-universe, but we have to stop at some point. That said, the ancient tales of the Dwemer, though interesting, as I noted with my Azura video and Azura and the Box, the thing about those tales is we must assume that they're largely fictional. That said, their underlying messages are still important. The idea that the Aedra, Daedra, or both were involved is not too much of a stretch in the case of one of its tales, though one must remember that the ancient tales were not written by the Dwemer, rather they are meant to be a reference to some of the tales and experiences of that people. So what of some of the other more common out-of-universe theories that may be lacking sources to back them up? There's the Dwemer displaced theory, that is, they disappeared but they were not destroyed per se, which Yagrum does mention, and to be fair to this one, it's gained more credence recently, believe it or not, from one of ESO's quest lines. So this is a quick spoiler warning for the Dark Heart of Skyrim, so feel free to skip ahead. So in that, the villains of the story, the Grey Host, attempt to sunder Molag Bal's influence over their souls, that is, because they're vampires, by taking over a pocket realm, or creating one, that was beyond the reach of Aedra and Daedra, using the power of the Dark Heart. the dark heart being found originally by the Dwemer in Skyrim, which naturally with its lore is connected to Lorkhan's heart, at least in the past it was. So you may be in luck, Dwemer displacement theory fans. There is now seemingly evidence that happened, or at least it was attempted in this case. That is, if the dark heart could be used for such a purpose, presumably Lorkhan's heart would also suffice. Of course, that idea raises its own questions. For example, what have the Dwemer been doing? Can they return to Mundus at any point? Will we see them in a future game? I'll leave it to you to decide what you think on that, so let me know. I know that many fans would like to see them return in some form. Again, if the Khajiit main was correct, then there may have been a bit of column A, column B and C, which in his case, he believed that Dragonbreak was the reason there were so many conflicting reports about Red Mountain. Personally, I'm going to say no to the Dragonbreak, as I feel another one after the warp in the west. That is, I think that Bethesda, when making Morrowind, which is the key source for this, probably didn't want to write themselves into another retconning corner. Personally, I like the idea that it was in fact Nervar at the behest of Azura, which also links nicely into a reason why Dagorthur might have been able to survive. I had pondered that in my previous videos. That is, it's not always clear how Dagorthur survived. This might be the reason. But whatever the case is, I think the Dwemer are genuinely gone, for now at least. You see, I think writing-wise, it is better to keep the Dwemer as the classic, long-lost, ancient, advanced civilization trope, as it allows for some steampunk elements in the series without going overboard with it, as I'm not sure I would like to see each race fighting mecha wars. That said, I want to believe Yagrum is not the last dwarf and that there were others. Like, I find it hard to believe that Mora, for example, who loves all secrets, would not keep one Dwemer safely in his realm, for example. There's simply no way he gives up their secrets of all races. But that's just a personal opinion. Again, it also seems plausible that there would at least be some Dwemer on other planes like our favourite Dwemer was. That said, what matters is that they are gone, destroyed, displaced or otherwise, and we are left with their complex legacy. A great people that grasped at the nature of existence and almost succeeded in their ambition to understand the earthbones and divinity. Their people may be gone, but what they learned and their actions with the heart still may play a role in Elder Scrolls 6. That said, please do give me your theories on their disappearance. I would certainly love to hear them in the comments. Conclusion. You can't escape the weave of fate. And so fate claimed the once mighty Dwemer. Their attempts to remake themselves and challenge the order of existence ended. Yet there are more webs of fate to be spun, pulled and manipulated, as next time we shall explore the web spinner herself, who attempts to meddle in the fate of mortal souls, and how the Dunmer came to master her most valuable lessons. As always, remember to like, comment and subscribe if you enjoyed this look at the Dwemer, and don't forget to let me know what your favourite race of elves are and why, but also give me your thoughts on the Dwemer's disappearance, as I didn't touch on all of the in-game theories and certainly not the many fan theories. Feel free to stick around for another minute or so if you want to hear my thoughts on the question of the day, but otherwise stay safe, have a great day, and thanks for watching. Question of the day. Which is your favourite elven race and why? So for me, it has been a toss-up between two races for a while. My original favourite was the Dunmer. Recall one of my favourite Oblivion playthroughs was a Dunmer spellsword who wore Dwemer armour and some fancy robes, and in Skyrim I did an ex-Morak Tong playthrough as well. which I enjoyed quite a lot. That said, I also love the Bosmer, if only because I love that their lore has been expanded and that they've been reinforced as being very distinct from traditional fantasy wood elves, just as the Dunmer are in comparison to normal dark elves. For the Bosmer, meat is always on the menu, and their perception of nature and hunting makes more sense logically for a people who are meant to protect the forest and the green. The strength of the Dunmer lore, on the other hand, goes without saying, but yeah, gameplay wise, I do love a good spell sword, hence why I do love Dunmer and Bretons for those sorts of role plays. With the Bosmer, I do like going for a War Dancer or Shadow Dancer build for those aware of Warhammer Wood Elves. Anyway, those are my favourite Mer, with the honourable mention of the Orsmer, who are also very cool. Remember to let me know what your favourite is. I would love to hear your thoughts. That said, once again, have a great day and thanks for watching.